King Charles has never been this furious, not in his entire reign. Harry and Meghan crossed a line so dark, so unforgivable, that Charles stopped being a father and became something far colder. Meghan publicly accused him of things so inhumane that people are still struggling to process what she actually said. Harry stood right beside her and backed every word. Charles heard all of it, and he responded with brutal consequences that nobody saw coming. Harry has just been erased completely, and James, the young royal nobody was watching, is already standing in his place. This just got very ugly, and the worst is still coming. The king draws a line. Everyone expected it to happen. For months, the international press had been screaming the same story. King Charles III was coming to America. Harry was sitting in Montecito, less than an hour by air. Surely, people said the father and son would finally sit down and talk. Even the most senior diplomats were burning with hope. Some people inside the palace itself believed Charles might use the trip to reach out, even just a little, a private meeting, a phone call, anything to show the world that the door between a father and his son was not completely dead. Harry submitted a request for an audience with his father, and what Charles did next shook the royal family to its core. He sent back a single sheet of paper, one line, a written refusal, fired back through his private secretary, the same way you reject a complete stranger demanding something they were never entitled to. His own son begged for a meeting, and his father slammed the door in his face in writing. But that document was only the beginning of what Charles had been quietly doing. Inside the palace, Charles had stopped referring to Harry as his son in private correspondence. Every internal briefing, every communication that passed through his office now carried the same two words: the Duke of Sussex. The Duke of Sussex, nothing else. The people around Charles felt the chill immediately. This was a sentence being handed down. Then came the internal document that circulates among senior palace staff, the briefing that tracks every active working royal, their place, their duties, their standing within the institution. Harry's name was torn out of it, and what filled that gap was not James Alexander's name. It was a blank line, just empty space where a son used to exist. Then the portraits were dragged down. One palace insider claimed that Harry's image was ripped from a prominent corridor inside a royal residence and hauled into storage, like something the palace was too disgusted to look at but not yet ready to burn. So what pushed a king to bury his own son like a dirty secret? Charles had been quietly furious with Harry ever since the break from the royal family. But what happened next turned that fury into something far colder and far more permanent. The situation intensified on a Sunday in late 2025 in Calabasas. Kris Jenner was turning 70, and the party was everything that the world produces: loud, glamorous, and full of cameras. Harry and Meghan were there, standing in the middle of the American celebrity elite, celebrating. And at that exact same moment in London, King Charles and Prince William were standing at the cenotaph in complete silence, laying wreaths for Remembrance Sunday. This is the most sacred day on the British calendar. The day the entire country stops breathing for a moment to honor every soldier who ever gave their life for that flag. The day that makes grown men weep in the streets. The day that means everything to the British people. And Harry was at a celebrity birthday party. When images from the party began leaking, Harry and Meghan demanded that Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner scrub every image of them from social media immediately. The reason quietly fed to friendly press outlets was that the couple wished to honor the fallen and did not want to be seen in celebratory images during a period of national mourning. Palace sources used one word to describe what Charles felt when this reached him: contempt. Because Charles had served, he understood in his bones what that day demanded. And his own son, a man who had also served, who had done 2 tours in Afghanistan, who knew exactly what that uniform meant, had chosen a celebrity party over all of it. The disregard was staggering. The disrespect was public. And for a king who had given his life to duty, watching his son treat it like an inconvenience was humiliating. The fury is real, and the door is closed. But what truly pushed Charles to the edge is what Harry and his wife Meghan have been saying behind him. Things so cruel and shocking, most people still struggle to accept it. Meghan's shocking accusations. While Charles was making irreversible decisions in silence, Meghan was busy building a very specific story and making sure it reached exactly the right people. Through carefully chosen press contacts, the story started leaking out. Meghan and Harry's business deals have been falling apart. The Netflix deal that had been announced to the world as a groundbreaking multi-million-dollar partnership was dying. The Spotify contract that was supposed to make them one of the most powerful voices in podcasting had already been buried. Every major project Meghan had walked into America boasting about had quietly collapsed one by one. And the reason Meghan gave for these setbacks was this. She claimed she was deliberately cutting and changing her own content before releasing it, removing anything that could possibly upset or offend the king. She was telling people that she was sitting on brilliant work, holding herself back out of respect for the royal family, that her silence was a sacrifice, that she was protecting Charles at the cost of her own career. According to insiders with direct knowledge of her private conversations, Meghan told people close to her that unnamed senior royals had been personally burning up phone lines to American media executives and brand partners, warning them to stay away from the Sussexes, silently strangling her deals one by one across the Atlantic without leaving a single fingerprint. She did not present this as a suspicion. She presented it as fact, and she made sure it tore through the right channels in the industry like wildfire. Then it exploded past a blacklist. Insiders claim Meghan told a contact in Hollywood that the royal family is a machine built specifically to destroy women who refuse to obey it. She named a specific senior female royal as the person personally running a coordinated campaign against her, pulling strings behind the scenes across 2 continents to make sure Meghan never found solid ground in America. And then came the darkest thing, she said. Meghan reportedly told people she trusted that King Charles is the direct cause of every single thing Harry has suffered mentally his entire life, that the written refusal during the U.S. visit was not political. It was Charles doing what he had always done to Harry, abandoning him deliberately, over and over again. She told people she had watched it happen with her own eyes inside the palace, that Charles once sat at the same table as her at a family gathering and refused to speak to her directly, firing every word through aides while she sat right there, looking straight through her like she was invisible. She called it calculated psychological cruelty. These accusations were ripping through press and industry circles when something happened that blew the entire foundation of everything Meghan had been saying apart. The Archbishop of Canterbury confirmed that a secret marriage never happened between Meghan and Harry. In the 2021 Oprah interview, Meghan had described a private ceremony 3 days before the official royal wedding. She said it was just the 2 of them in the garden, exchanging vows. The Archbishop eventually confirmed that the story was totally false. There was no private ceremony, no garden, no secret vows. For Meghan, this was the floor collapsing underneath everything she had built. For Oprah, who handed that story a global stage, it was a catastrophe she could not afford to be anywhere near. The most famous truth-teller in American media had broadcast a fabrication that the Archbishop of Canterbury himself was now forced to publicly tear apart. Through all of it, Meghan said nothing. The silence was its own confession. Not of a woman who had gone too far and knew it, of a woman who genuinely believed she had done nothing wrong at all. The industry had been watching every single move, and now it was ready to respond. Hollywood shuts the door. After the Archbishop's correction, Oprah understood what the 2021 interview had become. It was a broadcast of a false claim that had now been publicly corrected by a senior religious figure. For a woman who had spent decades building a brand entirely on authenticity and the pursuit of truth, that was an existential threat. She responded the only way that protected what she had built. She erased the distance between herself and the Sussexes entirely. When Meghan reached out through a mutual contact to explore whether Oprah might participate in a new project, the response that came back did not come from Oprah. It came from a junior assistant. A brief, polite decline passed through the lowest available channel. The woman who had given Meghan the most watched interview on the planet sent a junior employee to say no. That is a statement about where Meghan now ranked in the world Oprah operated in. Then Ari Emanuel made his decision. Emanuel is one of the most powerful talent agents in the world. He runs WME, William Morris Endeavor, the agency that represents some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Getting signed to WME means you have arrived. Losing WME means the industry has made a decision about you. Emmanuel operates on one simple principle. Is this client worth the trouble they bring? For months, the Sussex account had been hemorrhaging more internal damage than it was generating in value. But the moment that finally killed it came during Thanksgiving 2025. Meghan reportedly erupted in fury because WME staff were not available around the clock to manage her PR crisis during the American holiday. A holiday. The behavior that followed was described by people inside the agency as unlike anything they had ever dealt with from any client. That was all Emmanuel needed to hear. He picked up the phone and ended the relationship. What came next was worse than losing WME. Meghan's team approached 2 other major talent agencies in Los Angeles. Both said no. The Sussex brand had become what people in that industry were openly calling a burning building, and no serious agency wanted to be associated with what was happening inside it. Without representation, the streaming deals had nothing holding them in place. Netflix and Spotify projects that had been announced as revolutionary and groundbreaking were either shelved or sitting in a development limbo that everyone involved understood was never resolving. When the initial shock value of the royal grievance story ran out, there was simply nothing underneath it. No creative vision, no original identity, just the same story of leaving a family, told repeatedly to an audience that had stopped being surprised by it. Meghan's public explanation remained that she was protecting the monarchy through self-restraint. Inside Hollywood, that explanation had become a running joke. Harry's speaking fees completed the picture, from rumored 6 figures to $50,000 at a corporate retreat in Australia that sources described as thinly attended and visibly awkward. Several sponsors quietly requested their logos be removed from promotional materials before the event was publicly announced. They did not want their names near his. Every door was shut, and with a $14 million estate to maintain and a security bill Charles had permanently refused to cover, only one option remained. The one Harry had told the world he would never use. The children are the product. Harry had built a public identity around one specific promise. His children would be protected. He funded legal campaigns around digital privacy for children. He gave speeches at international forums arguing that exposing children online without their understanding was a human rights violation. He sued media organizations over it. He said it in every available format to every available audience. Whatever else changed, whatever else was lost, his children's faces were not for sale. By spring 2026, they were on camera for brand deals. The Easter video came first, then the skiing footage. Both were clearly designed to show a warm, normal, happy family just living their life. The kind of cozy content that pulls in sponsorship money from lifestyle brands. But what people actually saw when they looked closely was something that made them deeply uneasy. Digital analysts and forensic commentators started going through the footage frame by frame and publishing what they found. Lilibet's hair changed length and color between shots with no explanation. The 2 children standing in the snow looked physically wrong. The size difference between them did not match what 2 kids their ages and heights would actually look like, standing next to each other. The lighting shifted in ways that only happen when footage has been cut together from completely separate recordings. Several analysts landed on the same conclusion. This footage had been stitched together from different time periods, possibly years apart. If that interpretation is correct, this is not a family making a compromised choice under financial pressure. This is a family manufacturing a version of their children's existence for commercial purposes. People close to the Sussex circle told reporters that Harry did not agree to this. He argued against it. He cited his own public statements about children and digital exposure as the reason it could not happen. He pushed back directly. He lost. The decision came from Meghan's side, and Harry was overruled inside his own home on the single issue he had declared publicly and repeatedly was the one line he would never cross. He did not abandon his principles. They were taken from him, and he could not stop it. The financial pressure driving all of it is straightforward and brutal. The estate costs $14 million. Security runs into millions annually. Charles has refused to contribute permanently and officially. $50,000 speaking appearances in Australia do not cover this. Influencer retreats do not cover this. The children were not a creative direction. They were the last financial instrument available when everything else had been exhausted. And while Harry and Meghan were scraping every option left just to keep the lights on in Montecito, the palace had already moved on completely with a quiet, devastating decision to fill the space Harry had left with James Alexander. The replacement. James was 18 years old when he walked into the 2026 state opening of Parliament and gave nobody a single thing to talk about except how well he carried himself. James Alexander, Earl of Wessex, son of Prince Edward and Sophie, stood beside William and Catherine and did something that had become rare in that family. He showed up, did his job, caused zero problems, and went home. No drama, no grievance, no agenda. Just a young man who understood what the role required and gave exactly that. The palace had a clear strategy around James. Do not sell him as Harry's replacement. Sell him as everything Harry was supposed to be and never was. Where Harry spent years burying the institution under public attacks, memoir bombshells, and television documentaries tearing his own family apart, James simply served. That decision destroyed the one thing the Sussex operation had been banking on for years. Harry's team had always believed the palace would eventually need Harry badly enough to come back to the table. James ended that thinking completely. The monarchy did not come crawling back. It found someone else and moved on. Inside the palace, the changes were cold and precise. Harry's name was pulled from the internal document that tracks every active working royal. The space it left behind was not immediately filled with James's name. It sat empty first. Then James's name went in. At the commemorations marking Queen Elizabeth II's centenary, nobody really noticed Harry and Meghan's absence. It barely made the coverage. The cameras stayed on William, Catherine, and James. Anne, Edward, and Sophie stood solidly behind William. The family presented a united front, just a clean, stable institution pointing firmly at its future. And that future does not include Harry or Meghan. William, Catherine, and James are the picture now, clear and unambiguous. Meanwhile, in Montecito, in a house that costs $14 million to maintain, held together by children's videos and dwindling speaking fees, Harry and Meghan are watching the family they abandoned keep moving without them. Stronger, quieter, completely unbothered. And for two people who spent years making sure the world could not look away from them, being ignored this completely is the worst possible ending.